I remember the afternoon as if it were etched in acid. Every detail burned sharp against the haze of disbelief. The call came while I was sorting through dusty boxes in the attic, keepsakes from my childhood, relics of a life I thought I understood. The voice on the other end was clipped, professional, but the undercurrent of urgency made my heart pound so loud I could barely catch her name. "Miss Sterling? This is Patricia Owens from Western Trust Bank. I'm calling regarding a new loan application under your Social Security number." My breath caught. My skin prickled in a way I'd only felt once before, when my car spun out on an icy road and came to rest perilously close to plunging over a cliff. Panic and adrenaline warred in my veins, and as I steadied myself against a wooden beam, I managed to croak, "I didn't apply for any loan." Patricia's tone softened momentarily, but the machine was already in motion. "I understand this is unsettling. The application was submitted last week. We have all the paperwork. Would you like me to run through the details?" The attic's dusty beams blurred at the edges as I sank onto an old steamer trunk. Memories tumbled in my mind, laughter and sibling squabbles, long afternoons helping our mother in the kitchen, and the unspoken bond that knitted my sister Simone and me together. How could she betray that trust? Simone, bright, charismatic, always the one who drew the world's attention, had never been deliberately cruel. Or had she? As Patricia read off the loan amount, nearly $30,000, I felt a knot tighten in my chest. That sum was enough to shatter my credit, derail my plans for the boutique I'd been nurturing for years. In that moment, standing alone amidst relics of my past, I realized how precariously close I'd been to losing my future entirely. I asked for a moment, ending the call with a promise to return her call after I'd gathered my bearings. I sank back into the trunk's battered leather surface, the attic light casting long shadows that danced mockingly across the walls. My fingers brushed against an old photograph of Simone and me on the day I graduated from college. She'd hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe and whispered, "You did it, little sis." We'd been inseparable then, dreaming of our futures side by side. But this was different. I climbed down from the attic, each creaking step echoing in my mind like a countdown. Below, the living room was empty except for the afternoon sun filtering through lace curtains. I slid down until my back hit the couch, pulled my knees to my chest, and let the weight of betrayal wash over me. The life I'd built with care now hung in the balance, threatened by someone I loved more than anyone else. The next hours passed in a blur of phone calls, frantic typing on my laptop, and the distant hum of the refrigerator. I traced every detail of my credit report, scanned old bank statements, and even revisited my correspondence with Simone, seeking any clue, any misstep that could explain how she had done this. But no message, no hint, no sign of remorse. Only silence. I glanced at the photograph again, heart pounding with a storm of anger, hurt, and an unexpected surge of determination. I would not let this slide. I would face Simone, demand answers, and reclaim my life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. I woke up the next morning with a pit in my stomach and a single name pulsing in my mind like a bruise: Simone. The early light of dawn crept through my bedroom window, turning the walls into a canvas of gold and gray. I barely tasted my coffee as I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over her contact picture, an old photo of us at the beach, wind whipping our hair, arms slung around each other like we'd never let go. I called. She didn't pick up. I tried again. Voicemail. The message I left was short, my voice strained but calm. "Simone, it's Lena. Call me back. It's urgent." My name is Lena Sterling, and I'd always been the sensible one, the reliable sister, the fixer. Growing up, Simone was the fire, and I was the hearth-steady, patient, holding the pieces together. Even when our parents split, even when Mom worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on, It was me who quietly made sure Simone's late-night escapades didn't get her grounded, that her impulsive spending didn't drown us in overdraft fees. But a loan in my name? That was new. That was unforgivable. By 9 o'clock, I was outside Simone's apartment building on the east side. It was one of those old brick walk-ups that always smelled faintly of mildew and stale dreams. I rang the buzzer, no answer. I rang again, leaning into the intercom like I could will her voice through the static. "Simone, I know you're home. We need to talk." A pause. Then the door clicked. I climbed the narrow staircase, my heart hammering, like a jackhammer against my ribs. She opened the door before I could knock. There she was, Simone, all tousled hair, sleep-puffed eyes, wearing a ratty t-shirt that read, "Don't talk to me before coffee." For a moment, the sight was so familiar, so heartbreakingly normal, that I almost forgot why I was there. "Hey, Lena," she said, voice scratchy. "What's up?" "Don't do that," I snapped, stepping inside. "Don't pretend you don't know." Her brows pinched. "Know what?" "The loan, Simone. Western Trust called me yesterday. You used my name, my social security number. $30,000? She flinched, just barely. But it was enough. "Lena, no." My voice cracked in the tiny kitchen. "Don't lie, just tell me why." For a second, she seemed smaller than I'd ever seen her, shoulders hunched, eyes darting anywhere but at me. Then her chin lifted, and there it was again. That flicker of defiance I'd seen 1,000 times when we were kids. I needed it, okay? I was gonna pay it back. You wouldn't even have known. Pay it back? With what, Simone? You can't even keep your phone bill current. You've dragged me into this, my credit, my business. Everything is on the line because of you. She sank onto a bar stool, running, her fingers through her hair. "It's just money. You always make such a big deal out of everything." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Just money? It's my name, my future. How could you?" She looked up, eyes wet, because I didn't have a choice. Silence swallowed us. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand she explain what kind of choice that was. But instead, I leaned back against the fridge, feeling its hum under my shoulder blades. "You do have a choice, Simone. You always do. You chose to lie. You chose to steal. You chose me." Her tears fell then, quiet but relentless. "I'm sorry, Lena. I didn't know what else to do." I stood there, my anger shifting into something colder, sharper. I realized that sorry was just a word to her, an easy balm for a wound she'd never have to carry. But I would. "We're going to the bank," I said finally. "Today, you're going to tell them exactly what you did. You're going to make this right." She stared at me, eyes wide, like a cornered animal. "I can't. They'll arrest me." "Then you should have thought of that before you signed my name." The sun rose higher behind her, catching the edges of her hair, gilding her in light. That felt more like fire. I saw the sister I'd loved, the girl I'd protected, and the woman I didn't recognize anymore. This was only the beginning. If she wouldn't make it right, I would. And I would do it without losing myself to her shadows. I left Simone's apartment that morning with the echo of her tears chasing me down the stairwell. Each step felt like I was carrying a sack of wet cement on my shoulders, heavy, suffocating, impossible to shake off. The streets outside were just waking up, traffic humming, coffee carts on corners steaming up the crisp air. I watched a young couple laugh as they balanced lattes and pastries, so easily wrapped in their world, oblivious to the kind of betrayal that could split open. A life. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Patricia Owens again, the bank officer from Western Trust. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the green button, before I answered. "Ms. Sterling? I know this is a lot, but we need to move forward. Have you filed a police report yet?" The word police made my stomach lurch. Simone's face flashed behind my eyes, her wide, frightened eyes, the way her shoulders shook as she whispered sorry. But what choice did I have? If I didn't clear my name, the debt would anchor itself to me like a parasite, draining every chance I'd worked so hard for. I'm heading there now, I lied, my voice steady. I'll keep you updated. She sighed, the fatigue clear, even through the phone. Thank you, Miss Sterling. I'm really sorry you're going through this. I hung up and turned the corner toward the precinct. My reflection caught in a dark window, a woman in her mid-30s, hair pulled back in a messy knot, dark circles like bruises under her eyes. Lena Sterling, small business owner, responsible sister, now potential criminal by association. At the station, the air smelled like stale coffee and bleach. I waited my turn, fingers tracing the seams of my bag, replaying every word Simone had said. A young officer with warm eyes took my statement. His pen scratched across the form, each tick of his wrist carving out the truth of my sister's betrayal. In cold black ink, "Has your sister ever done anything like this before?" he asked gently. I thought about the times I'd covered her bounced checks, the credit cards I'd helped pay off, the bills that mysteriously disappeared until collections called me instead. But this was different. This was intentional. No, I said, but the lie tasted bitter. Not like this. He handed me a copy of the report. "We'll follow up, but you should also check your credit report weekly. Make sure nothing else comes up." As I stepped outside, the sun was high now, too bright for how I felt inside. I found a bench across the street, sitting with my knees pressed together, the report a crumpled flag in my hands. How had I not seen this coming? Or had I just refused to see it? My phone dinged again. This time, it was an email from Western Trust confirming the fraud investigation. They'd freeze the account, but the damage was already swirling around me like a storm cloud. I needed air. I needed to think. I walked aimlessly through the neighborhood until my feet carried me to a little cafe I used to love. It was tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore, the kind of place Simone and I used to sneak off to when we wanted to play grown-ups, ordering cheap cappuccinos and dreaming about our futures. I ordered tea and found a quiet corner. The hum of the espresso machine, the soft clink of spoons, the low murmur of conversations, it should have comforted me. Instead, every sound felt sharp, like glass under my skin. I pulled out my laptop, forcing myself to look at my business plan. My boutique, Sterling Threads, was supposed to open in 2 months. A small space, full of vintage finds and locally made pieces, a place where people could feel seen, special. Now the loan Simone had taken out in my name threatened every penny I'd saved for it. I ran the numbers again and again, trying to find a way to make the math bend in my favor. But there it was, every time a gaping hole where trust used to be. I needed to know why. I needed the truth from Simone's lips, not her empty apologies. Before I knew it, the tea had gone cold and the sky outside had shifted to dusk. I packed up, my mind racing. Simone wouldn't come clean on her own. And if the police couldn't fix this fast enough, maybe I could. If she wouldn't make it right, then I would find a way to force her hand. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through our old messages, searching for anything, any hint of what she'd done with the money. There were vague references to someone named Rafe, cryptic notes about a plan, and late-night Venmo transactions that didn't make sense. A chill crawled up my spine. Who was Rafe? And what plan? I hit dial on Simone's number again. Straight to voicemail, my pulse quickened. I would not let her slip away this time. Tomorrow, I would go back. Tomorrow, I would get the truth out of her, if it was the last thing I did. The next morning, I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, tracing the swirl of plaster like it held some secret I'd missed. By 6, I was dressed, coffee in hand, and pacing my living room. My laptop sat open on the table. Simone's cryptic messages about Rafe and her plan still glowed on the screen like embers refusing to die out. I left my apartment just as the city was rubbing the sleep from its eyes. The streets were still hushed, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're trespassing in your own life. My breath fogged in the morning chill as I walked the 10 blocks to Simone's place, each step fueled by equal parts rage and desperation. When I arrived at her building, I didn't bother buzzing this time. I knew the door's trick. A swift push on the lower left corner always popped the lock. We'd discovered that as teenagers, sneaking back in after curfew. The hall smelled of stale cigarettes and yesterday's takeout. I climbed the stairs, 2 at a time, my pulse thundering. At her door, I didn't knock. I pounded. "Simone, open up. We're not doing this again." There was a shuffling sound. Then the door cracked open just enough for her tired eyes to peek through. "Lena, it's too early for this." I shoved the door wide before she could close it on me. "Who is Rafe? Don't lie to me." She stumbled back. Hair a tangled halo, eyes wide with a mix of anger and fear. "I don't know what you're talking about." I held up my phone, the screen glaring between us. "These messages, Simone, the late-night money transfers. What the hell did you get yourself into?" She sank onto the arm of her couch, rubbing her temples like I was the problem. "It's nothing. He's just someone I met. He was going to help." "Me? Help you? By using my name to rack up 30 grand in debt?" My voice cracked. "Is he threatening you? Are you in trouble?" She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I hated the way her eyes shifted, darting to the corner of the room, like the answer was hiding in the peeling paint. "He said he could flip the money, make it back 3 times over. We just needed seed money." My jaw dropped. "A scam?" "Simone, you fell for a scam?" She bristled, standing up. "It's not a scam. He knows people. He just needs more time." The heat in my chest turned to ice. "So you handed him money you didn't have, money you stole from me, and now he's gone. Isn't he?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I had no sympathy left to give. "He's not gone. He's just laying low. He told me not to worry." I laughed, a brittle, humorless sound that echoed off her cracked plaster walls. "Not to worry? Simone, you're neck-deep in fraud. You've dragged me into it, and you're telling me not to worry?" She crossed her arms like a child. "You always think you're better than me. Perfect Lena, the one who does everything right. Well, guess what? Sometimes you have to take risks." I stared at her, my sister, the girl who used to braid my hair before school, the girl I stayed up with when she was sick. She felt like a stranger now. "This isn't a risk, Simone. It's ruin." The silence between us was deafening. I forced myself to sit across from her, elbows on my knees, voice low but steady. "Listen to me. We can still fix this. But you have to come clean. Who is he really? Where does he live?" She shook her head like a stubborn child. "I don't know. He doesn't tell me everything. Simone." I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "If you don't help me, I will press charges. Do you understand? I can't let you sink me with you." Her mouth fell open. "You'd have me arrested? You already did this to yourself. I'm done saving you." She folded in on herself, shoulders trembling. "I can't lose you, Lena." The old part of me, the one who fixed everything for her, almost softened. Almost. But then I thought about the boutique, my credit, the years of sacrifices I'd made to build something of my own. "Then prove it," I said. "Help me find him." I pulled out my phone, thumbs flying as I took screenshots of every message, every transaction. "We're going to the police, together, today, and you're going to tell them everything." She looked like she might run, but I grabbed her hand, squeezing it so tight she winced. "If you love me at all, Simone, you'll do this." She nodded, a single broken motion. Okay, Lena, I'll do it." But deep inside, I knew this was far from over. Rafe wasn't just some shady guy who'd ghost and vanish. He'd left breadcrumbs, money, trails, promises, threats. And I was ready to follow every last one, because if Simone wouldn't save herself, I'd have to do it for both of us, even if it cost me everything else. We didn't speak on the way to the precinct. Simone sat in the passenger seat of my old sedan, arms crossed so tight across her chest, I could hear the fabric of her sweater strain. The city rolled by in muted colors, grays and browns, the sharp blue of the morning sky so at odds with the storm inside my chest, dotted every red light. I caught her reflection in the window. Once, I thought she'd bolt. But she stayed, pinned there by something heavier than fear, maybe the first traces of shame. At the station, the officer at the front desk recognized me immediately. "Miss Sterling, Detective Garza's ready for you." Simone hesitated as we stepped into the small interview room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a camera eye in the corner blinking red like a heartbeat. She flinched at the sight of the recorder on the table. "Simone," I said, my voice softer now, "this is the only way." Detective Garza was calm but relentless, a quiet force wrapped in a cheap suit and a tired smile. He asked her questions that made her flinch, names, dates, transactions. She fumbled through the story about meeting Rafe at a club, about his promises of easy money, about the loan she'd taken out in my name because, in her words, he said he'd pay it fast. Garza pressed harder. "Did he threaten you? Did you ever feel unsafe?" Simone shook her head, but her eyes darted to me, pleading for a lifeline I couldn't give. "No, I believed him." It was almost laughable. All the years I'd spent keeping her safe, covering her debts, lying for her, and now here she was, reduced to this raw, shaky confession, clinging to the same excuses she'd always made. Garza finished taking her statement and gave me a reassuring nod. "We'll look into Rafe. There's a good chance he's done this to other people." I sank back in my chair, exhaustion seeping into my bones. "What happens now?" Garza sighed. "We'll open an investigation. If we can find evidence that she was coerced or defrauded too, it could help. But you need to prepare for the bank to press charges for identity theft." Simone's head snapped up. "Wait, you mean I could go to jail?" Garza didn't sugarcoat it. "Yes, ma'am, it's fraud." I watched her crumble, her shoulders shaking, tears slipping down her cheeks. A few months ago, I would have wrapped my arms around her, whispered that it would be okay. But the truth was, I didn't know if it would. When we stepped out into the daylight again, Simone turned to me on the steps of the precinct. "Lena, what if they lock me up?" "Then you'll face it," I said. "And maybe you'll finally learn something." The hurt on her face stabbed at something soft in me. But before I could second-guess myself, my phone buzzed. An email from Western Trust, an update on the fraud claim. They'd frozen the funds but needed more documentation from me to prove I hadn't been involved. I couldn't even breathe. "I have to go," I said. "We'll talk later." Simone grabbed my sleeve. "Please, Lena, don't abandon me." I pulled my arm free. "Don't make me regret not pressing charges myself." I walked away, each step feeling like I was tearing through a net that had held us together my entire life. Back at my apartment, I spent the afternoon on the phone with the bank. Every minute was a reminder of how easily one lie could unravel. Years of trust. I sent them my police report, copies of Simone's statement, every shred of evidence I could find that painted me as the victim. By evening, I collapsed onto the couch, my laptop balanced on my knees. My boutique's business plan glowed back at me, dreams of opening day. Shelves lined with vintage dresses, local artists' jewelry, a place that felt like me. Now every spreadsheet was an open wound. A ping pulled me back. A message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have gone to the cops." My pulse stopped. I stared at the screen. Another message came in seconds later. "Tell your sister to keep her mouth shut. Or next time, it won't just be money." My breath rattled in my chest. Rafe. He knew. He was still watching us. I hit record on my phone, saving the messages, forwarding them to Detective Garza. But the fear had already sunk its teeth in deep. Simone was reckless. But Rafe was something else. He was dangerous. I knew then that this wasn't about money anymore. It was about survival. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. I closed my laptop, locking eyes with my reflection in the darkened window. For the first time in years, I wasn't sure if being the fixer would be enough. Tomorrow, I'd confront Simone again, and I'd find Rafe myself before he found us first. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of my apartment, every hum of passing cars out sent my pulse skittering. I kept replaying the messages from that unknown number, Rafe's words, coiling around my throat like a rope. Tell your sister to keep her mouth shut. Or next time, it won't just be money. I forwarded everything to Detective Garza, but even his reply, "Will trace it. Stay safe," felt like a paper shield in a hurricane. By morning, my hands were shaking. As I poured coffee, I barely tasted it. My laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, tabs scattered like breadcrumbs, news stories about local fraud rings, social media profiles, dead-end aliases that all seemed to vanish the closer I looked. Rafe was a ghost, no last name, no address, just a series of late-night transactions and a string of promises that had turned my life inside out. When I called Simone, she didn't answer. Again, I grabbed my keys and left anyway. The January cold slamming against my skin as if to keep me awake. This time, when I got to her building, she didn't answer the door. I banged until the neighbor peeked out, giving me a dirty look. I didn't care. I pressed my ear to the door silence. My gut twisted. I went down the fire escape instead, the old iron freezing against my palms as I climbed to her kitchen window. It was cracked open. I pushed it up and climbed inside like I was 16 again, sneaking back into our house after curfew. Except this time, the chill that greeted me was wrong. The apartment was empty. Too empty. Drawers were open. Her phone charger was missing. Her favorite jacket wasn't on the hook. I checked her closet. Half her clothes were gone. Panic spiked through my chest. I found her phone on the counter, powered down. A note lay next to it, her handwriting messy like it always was when she was scared. Asterisk, Lena, I'm sorry. Don't look for me. I'll fix this. Don't call the cops again. It'll only make things worse. Asterisk, I sank onto the floor, the note trembling in my hands. She's running? From him? Or with him? The questions clanged in my head, louder than my heartbeat. I called Garza immediately. She's gone. She left a note. His sigh was heavy. Stay put, Miss Sterling. We'll send someone over. No, my voice shook. I'm done waiting. After I hung up, I sat in her living room surrounded by the ghost of our childhood photos on the fridge, an old mug we'd fought over as kids. I remembered Simone swearing she'd never let anyone hurt me. And now here she was, pulling me straight into the fire she'd set. My eyes fell on a battered duffel bag by the door, half zipped, forgotten. I dumped it out, searching for a clue. Inside, I found a scrap of paper tucked into a side pocket, an address. No name, just an address scrawled in her frantic handwriting. And underneath it, Rafe. Friday 9 p.m. It was an industrial part of the city, a few blocks from the docks. I knew the neighborhood, abandoned warehouses, cheap motels, the sort of place you went when you didn't want to be found. I stuffed the paper in my pocket and left. I didn't tell Garza, didn't tell anyone. If Simone was stupid enough to go to Rafe alone, I wasn't about to wait for her to end up on the news. I had to see it for myself. I had to see him for myself. The sun was low by the time I got there, turning the whole street into a tangle of shadows and amber light. I parked a block away, my car's engine ticking like a heartbeat. The warehouse sat squat and ugly against the skyline, graffiti crawling up its brick sides like a disease. I waited. I watched. A black SUV idled at the back-loading dock, engine rumbling. A man leaned against it, hood up, cigarette glowing like a lighthouse in the dark. My hands shook as I raised my phone, snapping a blurry photo. I couldn't see his face, but I knew. I crept closer, the gravel crunching under my boots. Then I heard her voice, Simone's, low and desperate. It was coming from inside. I slipped along the wall until I found a busted window, crouched low, and peered through. She was standing with him, Rafe, tall, broad shoulders, that easy swagger that had always pulled her in. He was talking too softly to hear, but his hand was on her arm, squeezing hard. Her face was pale, eyes wide, like a rabbit in a snare. I snapped another photo. My breath fogged the glass. And then Simone turned, her eyes locking with mine through the grime and shadows. Her lips parted in shock. For one heartbeat, she almost smiled. But then Rafe looked over his shoulder, straight at me. Straight through me. A grin split his face, a grin that said he knew exactly what he'd do next. I stumbled back, heart slamming into my ribs. Simone's voice rose inside. Run. I did. I ran, gravel slipping underfoot. My mind screaming that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Behind me, the SUV's engine roared to life. Headlights flared. And in that frozen moment, I knew this wasn't just about the money anymore, that it was a hunt, and I just made myself the prey. I didn't stop running until my lungs felt like they were tearing open. My feet pounded the cracked pavement, weaving through alleys and side streets until the roar of the SUV was just a memory buried under the drumbeat of my own pulse. I finally stumbled to a stop. I found myself in an abandoned lot behind a boarded-up convenience store. I leaned against the graffiti-stained wall, gasping, every breath a knife in my chest. My hands were raw from where I'd caught myself on the jagged bricks, but the pain didn't matter. All I could see was Simone's face in that warehouse pail. Scared, trapped. And Rafe's grin, that shark smile that told me this wasn't over. Not even close. I forced myself to calm down enough to dial Detective Garza. He answered on the second ring. Miss Sterling, where are you? I found them. I panted, Simone. And him, Rafe. He saw me, Detective. He knows I'm looking for him. He knows I saw them together. Garza's voice sharpened like a blade. Are you safe right now? I looked around at the empty lot, the broken bottles and burned-out cars. No. But I will be. Don't go back there, Lena. We'll send a unit. It won't matter. He'll be gone. He's smart. He's careful. I need to find Simone. No, you need to let us handle it. If he's threatening you, I can't just sit and wait for you to build a case while she disappears. I snapped. She's my sister. Silence. Then Garza's voice softened, that tired kindness that made him feel almost like an uncle you could trust. I know you're scared, but you can't do this alone. I ended the call before he could talk me down. Alone was the only way I'd ever done anything for Simone. And I wasn't about to stop now. I forced myself to think. If I were Simone, where would I run? Not to our childhood home. She hadn't set foot there since Mom's funeral. Not to any friend's couch. She'd burned those bridges long ago. Rafe would keep her close, but she'd find a way to leave me a breadcrumb. That address she'd left, was it the only one? I turned it over and over in my mind until exhaustion cracked me open. Then I remembered her old social media accounts, the ones she'd used when she was still half a kid, posting grainy selfies and captions about escaping to the ocean. When everything's too much, I go where no one knows me. She'd typed that once, tagged with a photo of a rundown motel out by the docks. I pulled out my phone, thumbs trembling as I searched. There it was, the Seaglass Inn. Cash only. Number. Cameras, no questions. The kind of place where people went to disappear. I called a rideshare. No way I was driving my car if Rafe was looking for it. The driver barely looked at me when I climbed in, hugging my coat tight around me as the city lights blurred past. My mind spun the whole ride. What would I even say to her? How would I pull her out when she didn't want to be rescued? When we reached the Seaglass, the car idled by the curb as I stared at the peeling paint, the flickering neon sign. A couple argued near the vending machine, their voices muffled under the hum of the highway nearby. I stepped inside the dim lobby, the stale air thick with cigarette smoke. The clerk barely glanced at me over his newspaper. "I'm looking for my sister," I said. "Simone Sterling." She might have checked in with a man. His eyes didn't move. "We don't keep names." I leaned in, voice trembling. "She's in danger." "I'm in danger. Please." He sighed, flicked his gaze to the logbook. "Room 12, but you didn't hear it from me." I slipped him a 20 and hurried down the cracked hallway, each step echoing off the walls like gunshots. I stopped outside room 12. My knuckles hovered over the door, my heart ricocheting in my ribs. I knocked once, twice, no answer. I tried. The knob, locked. I pressed my ear to the door. Voices, Simone's sharp, panicked. And his low, oily, the kind of voice that slides under your skin and makes you want to scrub it off. "You think she won't come looking?" Simone hissed. "You think Lena will just let this go?" Rafe laughed, and the sound made bile rise in my throat. "She's just a scared little mouse. She'll learn." I forced myself to breathe. Think. What? Now Lena? I had no plan, no backup, just raw instinct and a tidal wave of anger that made my fingers curl into fists. I knocked harder this time, loud enough to silence the voices inside. The door swung open so fast I almost fell in. And there, he was, Rafe, blocking the doorway like a boulder. Dark hair, tattoo snaking up his neck, that grin stretched wide like a gash across his face. "Well, if it isn't the mouse herself," he drawled. "Looking for something?" Over his shoulder, Simone stood frozen, eyes wide and glassy. Our eyes met, 1,000 unspoken words crashing between us. "Let her go," I said, voice steady even though my legs were trembling. "You have what you want. Leave us alone." His grin widened. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm just getting started." Before I could step back, his hand shot out, grabbing my wrist in a vice. He yanked me inside, slammed the door behind me. The room smelled like cheap whiskey and fear. Simone's lips parted, but no sound came out. Rafe leaned in close, breath hot against my ear. "Now it's a party." I knew then I wasn't getting out of this room without a fight. And I had no idea who'd make it out alive. The room smelled like stale cigarettes, spilled beer, and the sharp metallic tang of fear. Rafe's grip on my wrist tightened until my fingers went numb. He dragged me further inside, pushing me down onto the threadbare armchair like I weighed. Nothing. Simone stood by the window, shoulders pressed to the peeling wallpaper as if she could melt into it. Her eyes darted between us, her lips parted, but no words came out. I'd never seen her so quiet. Not once in 34 years. Rafe leaned over me, his breath sour with whiskey. "You've been busy, Mouse," he said, tapping a finger against my temple, crawling around my business, calling the cops. "You know how that makes me look?" I swallowed back the panic clawing at my throat. "Let her go, Rafe. Take whatever money you want. Just let us leave." His laugh rattled me more than his threats ever could. "Money? Oh, sweetheart, money's nothing. Money comes and goes. Respect? Loyalty? That's what matters. And you made me look like a fool." Simone stepped forward then, voice trembling. "Rafe, please. She didn't do anything." "I'll fix it, I swear." He turned on her so fast she flinched. "You? Fix it?" he snorted. "You're the reason we're here, princess. You think I didn't know you'd run straight to Big Sister when things got hard?" I saw it then how deep his hooks went. The way Simone's hands shook, the way her shoulders curved inward. She wasn't just scared. She was owned. And I'd been too blind, too busy believing I could save her, to see she'd already given herself away. I forced my voice to stay calm. "If you hurt us, the cops will know. They're already watching you. They'll trace the messages you sent." "Me?" Rafe's eyes glittered. He crouched, so close I could see the flecks of gold in his irises. "You think they care? You think they'll get here in time?" He stood, pacing the dingy carpet. Simone's eyes flipped to me, pleading, frantic. She mouthed something I couldn't read. I shook my head just enough for her to see. Don't. Rafe cracked his knuckles, a slow, deliberate sound. Here's how this is gonna go. You're gonna call your nice bank lady and tell her it was all a misunderstanding. You'll take the loan back, pay it off, and keep your pretty mouth shut. I can't, I snapped. They know it's fraud. They're not idiots. His face darkened, and for the first time, I saw the real monster simmering just below his grin. Then maybe a little reminder. Will help. Before I could move, he grabbed Simone by the arm, yanking her toward him so hard she gasped. He pressed the back of his hand to her cheek like a mock caress. Maybe your sister needs to see what happens when you don't listen. Rage exploded behind my eyes. Don't you touch her. He turned that shark grin on me. What are you gonna do, Mouse? My mind raced. The window, the lamp, the door. No weapon, no plan, just raw instinct. He shoved Simone onto the bed, looming over her like a thundercloud. Lena, run, she choked out, voice raw. Please, Rafe laughed. Too late. And that's when the noise cut through everything, a low, muffled pounding from the hallway. Then a voice. Police! Open up. Rafe's head snapped toward the door. I felt the tension break, my heart exploding into my throat. Simone scrambled off the bed, crawling toward me on the floor like we were kids again, hiding from monsters under our blanket fort. Rafe lunged for the door, but I moved faster than I'd ever moved in my life. I grabbed the lamp from the side table, its cheap base heavy in my hand. I swung it with every ounce of rage and fear I'd buried for years. The lamp cracked against his shoulder. He roared, spinning on me, hand raised. I ducked, the whoosh of his swing grazing my ear. Simone shrieked behind me, but I couldn't look back. The door splintered inward, 2 uniformed officers storming in, guns drawn. Drop it, hands where? We can see him, Rafe froze, eyes wild, chest heaving. For a second, I saw the calculations behind his eyes. Then he lunged for the window. One of the officers tackled him mid-leap, the 2 of them crashing into the rickety dresser. Simone grabbed my arm, pulling me back, sobbing, her nails digging into my skin like a lifeline. Lena! Oh God, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I couldn't hear her. Couldn't see past the blur of adrenaline and disbelief. I just clung to her, both of us shaking, as the room spun with shouts and the static hiss of radios. It was over or so, I thought. Because as they dragged Rafe out in cuffs, his eyes found mine. And that grin, that damned grin, never wavered. He mouthed 2 words before they shoved him out the door. Not over. It should have felt like relief. The squad car's red and blue lights bathed the Sea Glass Inn in a flickering glow that made the whole place look like a crime scene out of a movie, which, I suppose, it was. Simone and I sat huddled together. On the curb, wrapped in identical scratchy blankets one of the officers had given us. The night air was sharp and bracing, but it did nothing to clear the fog in my head. Detective Garza knelt in front of us, his breath puffing white in the cold. Ems checked you both out. No broken bones, no concussions. That's a miracle, Lena, I nodded, my throat too raw to answer. My fingers were still curled like claws. The ghost of the lamp's weight burned into my palms. Simone shivered beside me, eyes red and swollen. She hadn't let go of my hand since they'd pulled Rafe off her. She squeezed it now, like she was trying to anchor herself to the one thing she hadn't yet burned to ash. Garza shifted his gaze to her. Miss Sterling, do you understand what happens next? She flinched, her blanket slipping off her shoulder. I tucked it back around her because of course I did. It's what I'd always done. You'll have to testify, Garza continued. If you cooperate fully, the DL might work with you on the fraud charges. But there's no guarantee. She nodded, voice barely a whisper. I'll do it. I'll tell them everything. Garza's eyes softened just a flicker. We'll have an officer drive you both home tonight. And we'll arrange for protection. Rafe won't make bail easily, but we're not taking chances. Protection. The word made my insides coil. Not over. That's what he'd said. That grin. That promise. I knew monsters like him didn't just disappear behind bars. The ride back to my apartment was silent, except for Simone's muffled sniffles. I stared out the window at the city lights streaking by, each one a reminder of the life I'd fought so hard to build, the life that now felt so fragile. When we got inside, Simone dropped onto my couch like her bones had turned to water. "I'll sleep here," she murmured, "just for tonight." I didn't argue. I made her tea she didn't drink, laid a blanket over her that she'd probably kick off in her sleep. I watched her eyes flutter closed, her breathing uneven. I wanted to hate her. God, I wanted to rage and scream and spit every accusation I'd swallowed for years. But all I could do was stand there, the weight of her betrayal pressing on my chest like a stone. Not over. Rafe's words echoed in the back of my mind, a dark promise threading through every thought. When I finally dragged myself to bed, sleep didn't come. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every detail of the warehouse, the motel room, the look in Simone's eyes when she realized she was in over her head. I thought about my boutique, about the lease I'd probably lose now that my credit was in ruins, about the shelves that would never hold the dresses I'd dreamt of curating, about the trust I'd always put in people who only ever saw me as a safety net. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, jolting me from my thoughts. A new email from Patricia Owens at the bank. Ms. Sterling, I'm sorry to inform you that due to the ongoing fraud investigation, we're unable to process your business loan at this time. We will revisit your application once the case is resolved. I felt the sting behind my eyes before the tears came. All that work, all those hours. I pressed the phone to my chest, willing myself not to make a sound in the dark. Simone's soft snoring drifted in from the living room, oblivious to the wreckage she'd left behind. I don't know when I fell asleep. I only know I woke up to an empty couch and a note on my kitchen counter. Lena, I'm so sorry. I can't stay here. I'll make it right. I promise. Love, Simone. I crumpled the note in my fist, staring at the space where she'd been. The blanket still smelled like her cheap shampoo. Garza's words circled in my mind. No guarantee. I knew what that meant now. Simone would run again. And I couldn't save her this time. I didn't want to, but as I stood there, surrounded by the quiet ruins of my plans, I realized I had to save myself. If I wanted my life back, my name back, my future back, I couldn't wait for the system to clean up her mess. Or Rafe's. I'd lost too much already. And I had nothing left to lose. So I made a promise to myself, not to her. The next time I found Simone, it wouldn't be to drag her out of the fire. It would be to let her burn in it if she chose. But Rafe was mine now, and I would not stop until I buried him myself. It's strange how you can wake up one morning and know your life will never be the same, and somehow feel relief in that certainty. The day after Simone disappeared again, I stood at my kitchen counter, a mug of cold coffee in my hands, and told myself this was it. No more illusions. No more saving people who didn't want to be saved. The city outside my window moved like clockwork cars humming, neighbors dragging garbage bins to the curb, the world spinning oblivious to the wreckage inside my apartment. Rafe was out there, somewhere. Simone too. Maybe together, maybe not. I didn't care. Or maybe that was the lie I told myself to keep the anger burning instead of the grief. Detective Garza called me before lunch. "We found a lead," he said. Rafe had a storage unit under an alias. It's empty now, but it means he's not as invisible as he thinks. And Simone? I asked, even though I already knew. His pause told me everything. "We're trying, Lena, but if she doesn't want to be found, then she won't be." I finished for him. When we hung up, I sat at my tiny kitchen table, tracing circles on the wood with my fingertip. Memories of Simone drifted in and out like smoke her laugh when she got away with something. The way she'd squeeze my hand when she was scared. The time she swore she'd never let anyone hurt me. Promises. All of it just promises. My phone buzzed again, and for a split second, I let myself hope it was her. Instead, it was Patricia Owens from the bank. I almost didn't pick up, but I needed to. "Miss Sterling," she began, her voice gentle. "I want you to know I've flagged your file personally. The fraud report is strong. Once the case closes, you'll have a path to rebuild your credit. It's not forever. It feels like forever." I whispered, my eyes locked on the vision board, pinned above my desk. Photos of storefronts, sketches of the boutique's layout, swatches of fabric I'd collected for years. Dreams turned to collateral damage in my sister's wake. "I know," Patricia said, "but I've seen worse. And I've seen people claw their way back. You seem like a fighter, Miss Sterling." I hung up, the words ringing hollow at first. A fighter. Maybe I was. Or maybe I'd been so busy fighting for Simone that I'd forgotten how to fight for myself. I spent the afternoon cleaning the apartment like I could scrub away the last month Simone's presence. Rafe's threats, the stain of the trail clinging to every corner. I boxed up the blanket she'd slept under, the mug she'd used, the half-empty shampoo in my bathroom. Every trace of her had to go. It felt like an exorcism. Late that night, I sat at my laptop, staring at the business plan I'd once treated like a sacred thing. It hurt to look at it, like pressing on a bruise just to see if it still throbbed. But I didn't close the file. I opened a new tab instead. Typed in, "Identity theft recovery, small business rebuilding, personal loans for fraud victims." The pages loaded slowly, each one a reminder that the road ahead would be long and steep and paved with more questions than answers, but it was mine to walk. Not Simone's, not Rafe's. When my eyes blurred from exhaustion, I pushed away from the desk and looked at the city lights twinkling like a promise just beyond my reach. Somewhere out there, Rafe was still grinning. Simone was still running. And maybe they both thought they'd won, but I knew something they didn't. I'd lost everything once. And I was still here, standing, breathing, planning. The next morning, I met with Detective Garza. He slid a photo across the table, grainy security footage from the storage unit. Rafe's silhouette, Simone's too. She was handing them something, a bag. I didn't know what was inside. I didn't ask. "What do you want to do, Lena?" Garza asked. "If we can track him down, you'll need to testify." "I want my life back," I said, "whatever it takes." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Good, because he's going to slip up. And when he does, we'll be ready." But inside, I knew I wouldn't wait for him to slip up. I couldn't. Not anymore. I left the station and walked to a little cafe near the precinct when Simone and I had snuck into as teenagers, giggling over stolen pastries and dreams of running away. I ordered tea for myself and nothing for her. And as I sat there, hands wrapped around the warm cup, I made a promise. This time, I wouldn't just survive. I'd rebuild. I'd find Rafe. I'd find Simone if I had to. And when it was done, when the last debt was paid and the last lie buried, I'd open that boutique. I'd open it under my own name, the name she'd tried to ruin. And I'd make damn sure they could never touch it again. Winter melted into a sluggish, damp spring, the kind that made everything smell like wet pavement and second chances. I marked the days by how long it had been since I'd last heard from Simone. 64 mornings without her voice in my ear. Without her apologies, her promises, her lies. 64 days of waiting for news about Rafe, but all I got were rumors, sightings, dead ends, whispers that he'd left the state or maybe the country. Detective Garza kept me updated, though. There wasn't much to tell. "These guys always slip up," he'd say every time I sat in his cramped office. The walls lined with old case files and coffee stains. "But you've got to be patient, Lena." Patience. It had never been my strength. I'd spent my whole life being The steady one, the fixer, the quiet glue that held our splintered family together. But this waiting? It was its own kind of violence. So I didn't wait. Instead, I went back to the beginning. The boutique plan, sterling threads. I pulled out the sketches I'd packed away, the notes I'd scribbled on napkins during lunch. Breaks when I still believed hard work was enough. Some nights I'd sit at my kitchen table, tracing the lines of my floor plan with the edge of my nail until it nearly tore through the paper. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, one stubborn corner at a time. I found part-time work at a vintage shop downtown. Ironic, maybe, given that I was supposed to own one by now, but it felt right. The owner, Maggie, was kind but sharp. The type of woman who knew every name and story behind the pieces she sold. She didn't treat me like a victim. She didn't ask about Simone or the loan. She just handed me a set of keys and said, "People come here for stories, Lena. Make sure you know yours." On my lunch breaks, I'd sit behind the counter, laptop open, researching every loophole, every resource for victims of fraud. I found a lawyer willing to take my case pro bono, thanks to an old customer who overheard me ranting one night while I was pricing silk blouses. He told me, "You fight fire. With fire, sweetheart. Don't let her drag you under again." I didn't sleep much. Nightmares came and went sometimes. Rafe's grin haunted me in dark alleys. Sometimes Simone's voice called my name from somewhere I could never reach. But when the sun came up, I always got out of bed. I always made coffee. I always opened my laptop. One night I got a call from Garza that made my stomach drop all over again. "We found her." "Where?" I breathed. "Is she okay?" He hesitated. "She was arrested in a motel outside Chicago. Small-time theft. She's using again." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose until the headache behind my eyes bloomed like a bruise. "She won't talk, will she, about him?" "She claims she hasn't seen Rafe in months," Garza said gently. "But we know she has. It's only a matter of time." I hung up without saying goodbye. The tears came after, slow and hot and silent. I pressed my forehead to the window, watching the city flicker and breathe and move on without her. Simone was my sister, my blood. I would always love her. But love had limits now. It had to. A week later, I stood in the empty shell of a storefront Maggie told me about. Tiny, cracked tiles, a leaky ceiling, but good bones. I pressed my palm to the dusty glass window, imagining racks of clothes, a little bell above the door. My name on the sign outside. Sterling Threads. It sounded right again. Like a promise I'd make to myself this time and keep. When I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number made my blood run cold. "Better watch your back. You're not done yet, Rafe." It had to be. I called Garza, my voice trembling as I read him the message. "He's taunting me now. He knows I won't back down." Garza's voice was the calm in my storm. "That's good, Lena. He's getting sloppy. That's when they make mistakes." I wanted to believe him, I really did. But as I stood on that empty street, my reflection staring back at me from the dark window, I knew this fight wasn't over. Maybe it would never be. Maybe there would always be another threat, another shadow in the corner, another lie ready to crack the ground under my feet. But I wasn't the girl who needed to be rescued anymore. I was the woman who'd built something from ashes, and I would do it again. And again, even if it cost me everything else. I turned my back on the window and walked home through the rain, the promise echoing in my mind like a vow stitched tight into my skin. Not done yet? Fine, neither am I. The last morning of this story wasn't dramatic. No car chases, no midnight knock on my door. Just me standing in the half-finished space that would soon be Sterling Threads. The smell of fresh paint mixing with the dust of old dreams finally breathing again. It had taken 6 months since the first fraud report. 6 months of meetings with lawyers, late nights rewriting business plans, phone calls to the bank, endless paperwork. 6 months of searching for Simone in every shadow, jumping every time my phone buzzed, wondering if the next message would be Rafe's grin in digital form, another threat, another warning. But the threats had stopped 3 weeks ago. Just stopped. Garza called it a sign that they were closing in, that someone like Rafe couldn't keep quiet forever. Maybe they'd catch him this time. Maybe they wouldn't. Either way, I knew now that monsters don't disappear when the door slams shut. Behind them, they linger. But so do the people who fight them. Simone? They found her again 2 states over, this time on a bench outside a gas station, so thin she looked like a ghost in my dreams. She's in a rehab program, now her 3rd. Maybe 4th. Garza asked if I wanted to press charges after they linked her to another stolen identity, another sister somewhere with the same hollowed-out stare I used to see in my own mirror. I told him no. I was done giving her new ways to be the story. This part was mine. On the day I signed the final lease, I took the long way home. I walked past every old place that still had Simone's fingerprints on my life. The park where she dared me to swing so high I thought I'd fly. The diner where she made me promise I'd always pick up when she called. The bus stop where I watched her disappear once before arms, wrapped around a man who whispered sweet poison in her ear, thought the memories don't burn like they used to. They're scars now, familiar, healed over but never gone. The boutique opened on a rainy Thursday. No grand ribbon cutting, no big crowd. Just Maggie, Detective Garza off duty, leaning against a shelf of vintage denim jackets and me. And a handful of customers who came in because they saw the sign. Sterling threads, vintage finds, and new beginnings. One woman held a silk scarf to her throat, twirling before the mirror. She asked where I'd found it. I told her, it's a long story, and left it at that. The truth was, every piece on those shelves carried a story. And so did I. The rain stopped around closing time. I flipped the little open sign to closed and stood at the window, watching the streetlights flicker on. My reflection looked tired, older maybe, but also like someone I hadn't seen in years, someone who finally knew that trust is precious. That love can break you if you let it, and that no one can save you but yourself. My phone buzzed in my pocket. For half a second, my heart stopped, expecting Simone's name, or worse, Rafe's, but it was just a customer from earlier, messaging to say thank you for helping her find something that made her feel beautiful again. I wrote back, come by anytime. There's more where that came from. As I turned off the lights, I thought about all the things I'd never get back, years spent fixing someone else's mess, money I'd never see again, the part of me that once believed family could fix everything. If you just loved hard enough. But I'd gained something too, the grit to stand alone, the courage to build a dream with my own hands, and the quiet understanding that some people choose to drown. No matter how many times you throw them a lifeline. When I locked up for the night, the bell above the door tinkled like laughter. Not hers, mine, because this was my story now, and I was finally free to write the ending myself.